This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
I'm still checking my pulse after an absurd sports weekend. The insane Saturday NFL games. We had the World Cup on Sunday morning. We had a really fun slate of NFL games during the day on Sunday too, and a thriller last night on Sunday Night Football. So I'm trying to, catch my breath, but, no better way to catch your breath than breaking down a Rams-Packers game on Monday night when neither team's likely going to the playoffs. We're going to break it down, let you know where we see value in the betting markets, our favorite props, and more at FanDuel Sportsbook by talking to Tom Vecchio here today. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as mentioned by Tom Vecchio. Check him out on Twitter at DFS_Tom. Ryan Williams is out for paternity leave, so congrats to Ryan in advance on that. But Tom, insane sports weekend. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, like you said, it's probably one of the best football weekends that I can remember over the past year and a half. Besides some of the playoff weekends that we've had, this is literally one of the best set of games that we've had. Saturday was unbelievable from start to finish. Maybe not the Browns-Ravens game, but it was certainly some great starting and ending. And then yesterday was crazy, start to finish. It was an awesome day. And while tonight's game may not be the most exciting on paper, I think there are some interesting angles.
Interesting, difficult. You can use whatever word you want. I'm leaning towards difficult because I've been trying to think about this game. I woke up at 5 o'clock this morning and was trying to figure out not intentionally. I just couldn't fall back asleep. I think I was still kind of juiced up from last night. And I was trying to think through single game stuff for DFS. So this is how my day has gone thus far. We're going to break down where we're seeing some value on the board at FanDuel Sportsbook and get you ready to hopefully cap off what has been a fun weekend. But before we get to that, quick reminder to make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts, especially during the holiday season where our schedule will be a bit different than usual, likely recording the full preview of the weekend on Wednesday this week as opposed to Thursday. So a bit different schedule for the next couple of weeks as a result of the holidays. So I'd recommend subscribing to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast to get those right as they are posted. And also check out Covering the Spread on the FanDuel YouTube page. With only a handful of Monday Night Football games remaining this season, FanDuel and Visa are coming together to make sure the excitement surrounding Monday nights is at an all-time high. Introducing Monday Night Perfect Picks presented by Visa, a free-to-play contest on FanDuel that gives you a chance to win a share of $10,000 in cash prizes courtesy of Visa. Here's how it works. You'll be presented with 10 questions centered around on-field action for Monday night's NFL game. Fans who answer the most questions correctly will win their share of the $10,000 prize pool. It's that easy. The contest is now live. So at FanDuel.com/free/contest/Visa Perfect Pick. And make your picks before Monday night. That's FanDuel.com/free/contest/Visa Perfect Picks. No purchase necessary. Age and location restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See full terms at FanDuel.com. Visa and its financial institutions have not sponsored or offered this promotion in any way. Let's dig in now to this game. We got the Rams at the Packers. And Tom, we'll talk about the betting markets for this game with the Packers favored by 7 here in just 1 second. But first, from a top-down perspective, I want your view on this game because, like I said, I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around this one.
Yeah, tonight's game is certainly interesting. As I mentioned, both teams on the outside looking in, not mathematically eliminated, but it's the reality of the situation for both teams. I think we're in for a much slower paced game tonight, lower scoring. My overall take is that the Packers win, the Rams cover, and we hit the under is essentially the theory that I'm going with, or my thesis for tonight of how I'm targeting things where slower pace game, both these teams are in the bottom 10 of the league for seconds per play. I don't see them pushing the ball. I don't want to say there's weather involved in tonight's game. It's not like it's going to be super windy. There might be a little bit of snow, but it's going to be super, super cold. I do not see these teams getting up and down the field quickly. So that's the kind of, overarching theme that I'm going with tonight. The under, Packers winning, but the Rams covering.
Okay, so I was kind of surprised when you mentioned that the Rams still a playoff chance, and I checked, and apparently they're at less than 0.1%. So there is a chance. You're telling me there's a chance.
Not mathematically eliminated yet.
There is a chance.
But obviously, this isn't what the schedule makers had envisioned with the Rams and the Packers late season. They expected this to be like two teams fighting at the top of the NFC, but this is not what we have.
I don't think they expected Baker Mayfield in this game. I think we can say that with a good amount of certainty. The Packers playoff odds, according to 538, 6%. So that's still like legitimate. If they win, it goes up to like 8%. So like they're still involved for sure. But I didn't realize the Rams actually had a shot. The NFC is a weird
There's no X
place
next to their name just yet.
Not yet. It's lingering. It's waiting. And I think actually if they lose, they can still somehow make it. Anyway, it's weird. It's very odd the way this works. I'm guessing the Washington Giants tie might have played a role in that in some way, but I don't know, man. It's a weird place for sure. Okay, so you mentioned you thought this would be a low-paced game. A slow-paced game, low-scoring game. Think that the Packers win, the Rams cover. So there are a lot of different ways you could play this in terms of the traditional markets. When you're looking at those traditional markets with the total at 39.5 and the Packers as 7-point favorites, what's your preferred way to play it there? Are you actually playing anything there, or are you using those assumptions to help guide your prop bets?
So I will, as of now, we're not playing anything. If I have to pick, it would be the Rams. I would take the Rams +7. The Packers, both teams have been bad against the spread this year. That's obviously pretty clear. But if I had to decide between any, it would be the Rams. I'm going to use that kind of as my guiding light, is like where I'm looking for some player props. I think there are some favorable spots to attack when we look at the offensive usage. Obviously, things have changed a lot for both teams, notably the Rams, just obviously with their quarterback changing. But I still think there's a really favorable spot for the Packers in their receiving market, which we'll get to. So right now, it's the Rams +7 for me if I had to make a pick, and I might be on it come the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay. So that one is the +7 is -110 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. Looking at my models for this game, they disagree, which is great because it means I can just ignore them and not bet anything on this game in terms of the sides. My traditional model has the Packers by 5.7 points. The newer model has it by 8.9. So very different numbers, and the actual market is right between them. So I can just sit that part out and not worry about a spread in this game. The total, I just built my total model last week, and it's back tested well. The games where it showed value on Sunday/Saturday didn't go as well, so I'm not going to have a play on the total. It does like the over. It has the total here at 41.5, so about 2 points above the current total. That does account for weather. So I don't know. It's not enough where I would take it, given that I just built this model and my level of confidence in it is not quite there yet. But there is value in the over based on that for whatever that's worth. So for me, what it winds up being is I think this is a stay away. I think that the market has this one pretty fairly pegged in terms of how it's viewing both teams here. It's a very volatile game, though. So I would say that if you are interested in the Rams, if you think that the Baker Mayfield stuff from last week is like legitimate, because it's a volatile game, that would give some credence to checking out the money line there, because it is +270 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. Again, I don't see enough to take that, but if you think that Baker Mayfield, what he did last Thursday, is legitimate, and he can actually make Tutu Atwell, Van Jefferson, Ben Skoranek, all those guys be, somewhat legitimate, I think I'd swing for the fences and be a bit more aggressive, because it is a volatile spot. Take advantage of the volatility, because it could also collapse. It's Baker. That's in play there too. So I think that if I were looking at that side, I'd go towards the money line personally, but I'm okay with making low percentage bets at times.
Right. I also think we need to take into account the game environment that we saw last week that allowed Baker to put up some of the stats where they were trailing, they were forced into a passing game script. It was a dome. We're talking about pretty ideal conditions for him to put up, 35 or 36 passing attempts, whatever it was. So I think we need to take that into consideration. Did they want him passing the ball that many times, after he's been there for 48 hours or whatever it was? Probably not, but they were forced to. It obviously worked out for them. But I think, again, given what we've seen, Cam Akers has been okay in some of these recent games for them. So I could see them using Akers a little bit tonight, a little bit more than we saw last week.
Yeah. Well, when they got Calvin Skoranek out at wide receiver, just mossing dudes down the field, contested catches. Maybe they'll pass more because of that. That's not an actual assumption. Okay, let's dig in here to the player props for this game, starting off on the Packers side. And one thing I had my eye on coming out of their bye week was Aaron Jones, because in that Bears game before the bye, he missed a lot of snaps. He grabbed his shin after a run play in the fourth quarter, played only like 3 snaps in the second half in that game. And so I wanted to see what his practice involvement would be coming off the bye. And he got 3 limited sessions. Now, he's not on the injury report. Like, he didn't have a designation. He's going to play. But the fact that he was not a full practice yet, to me, was pretty alarming. I don't want to be like, overboard on that, but I thought it was pretty concerning. So I think that's the key thing for me with Packers props is I don't expect Aaron Jones to be like full Aaron Jones right now. Where are you seeing value on the Packers side, Tom?
So I'm definitely on board with that. In the preseason, I was big on AJ Dillon in the role that I thought he was going to play because of the inconsistency in their receiving core. I thought they were going to use Aaron Jones more, split out wide, playing out of the slot. So I'm still high on AJ Dillon. And if Jones isn't going to be fully healthy, I think that would just lean me towards Dillon a little bit more, taking some unders on Aaron Jones. I think one of the unders I like the most would be under on Robert Tonyan, the tight end. It's at 22.5. He's kind of been pushed out of the passing offense in some of these recent weeks, playing a very, very limited role. Not to mention the fact that the Rams are pretty solid against their linebackers have been pretty solid against tight ends this year. So I'm on board with basically any and all unders for Aaron Jones, overs for Dillon, and then under for Robert Tonyan.
Yeah, looking at those numbers on the Packers backfield, the rushing yardage props for Dillon and Jones, 49.5 for Dillon, 55.5 for Jones. The rushing plus receiving numbers, 63.5 for AJ Dillon, and 78.5 for Aaron Jones. I think that if I were looking for ideal ways to attack those, I would be looking towards the rushing plus receiving over for Dillon, because he's involved in the passing game. Even when Aaron Jones is healthy, he had like 4 targets in that last game. But 63.5 rushing plus receiving I find that to be my favorite way to attack the backfield if I'm going with the assumption that Aaron Jones is still not fully himself. I think that'd be the route that I would take.
Right. And I don't know, a part of me wants to say they're not officially eliminated, but they basically are. Do they need to be pushing Jones out there if he's not actually 100%? Do they need to be pushing him out there in a game that doesn't mean anything when they have AJ Dillon? I don't know how many years Jones has left on his contract, but
he just signed a new one last offseason or this offseason. It was one or the other. Because there was 16,000 rumors about how he was going to sign with Miami and then never made it there.
Right. So if he has multiple years left on his contract, do they really need to push him out there in this game when they're essentially eliminated from the playoffs? This is where we start to take in, I said, the last time I was on here, we were talking about the Bucs and the Saints. We want to take that step back and actually look at the teams, who's in a spot to win, what do they need to get done. Now that these teams are essentially eliminated, it's okay, maybe they're going to give some other players a shot. This would lean towards Jones unders to begin with, even if he was fully healthy, just so they get other players involved. Not to mention the fact that he's injured or not fully healthy.
Right. I think it's a lingering thing with that shin because he's been on the injury report for a long time with that. His cap number next year is $20 million. That's absurd. He's got 2 more years in his contract. I don't think they would. He's a very good player. He deserves to be up. But my gosh, I didn't realize how high it was. That team is in cap hell. So
my thing is do they need to push out a player that they're heavily invested into for essentially a meaningless game?
Yeah.
And further risk I don't know, worsening this injury that he has.
Yeah. What's your favorite way to attack the backfield there if you had to choose one of those props?
It would probably just be straight with Dillon. Straight Dillon over rushing. His reception prop, I think, is only 1.5, right? Total receptions.
What's the juice on that?
It's 1.5. It's minus 128.
That's not bad.
It's not the worst spot in the world. 1.5 receptions is obviously not a lot. He's been getting a little bit more involved in the passing game, as you mentioned. So there's certainly some opportunity for AJ Dillon, combined with the fact that his receiving prop is also at 10.5, minus 113.
Okay.
So I think there's multiple ways. If you think Jones isn't fully healthy and they're just going to pound the ball with Dillon, that's the way to go about it. And frankly, Dillon's receiving props are pretty low.
Yeah, I find that very interesting, given the way they've used him. There was a lull this year where they kind of scaled back a bit on him, but that's not That's not happening anymore with Jones being banged up. Okay, let's flip sides and talk about the Rams here. Baker Mayfield, his first start, he missed that first series, if you remember, Thursday, how wild that whole scenario was. Where are you seeing value on the Rams side in this game?
That would be with Cam Akers, over 55.5 rushing yards. I know you mentioned just prior to us hopping on that you like the under on his total rushing plus receiving.
If they post it, which they haven't yet.
Which is not posting. We were obviously making assumptions on that. Yeah. But I like the over 55.5. You know, Green Bay isn't particularly good against running backs this season. Again, combined with the usage for Cam Akers, and I got to say, I was not big on Cam Akers at all this season in terms of season-long drafting him, just coming off this injury, the kind of uncertainty we had when it comes to the Rams backfield. Obviously, when Henderson was there, I was really, really low on Cam Akers. And obviously, it's been a whirlwind of a season for him, but he's actually looked pretty good and had some solid usage in the recent weeks, combined with what I think from this game overall. They don't want to have Baker throwing the ball 40 some odd times. They're going to lean on the running game, combined with the weather isn't amazing. Like it's going to be like 10 degrees or 15 degrees with the wind. Like this is kind of a slower running game, and Akers can get there on volume.
Yeah. The Akers one, I was looking because I wanted to see what his rushing plus receiving would be. It's not up yet, as I said. The reason I wanted to look at that is because he doesn't get a lot of work in the passing game. I don't think they like him at all in the passing game. So I could just look at receiving props, I guess, but they're not up either. So I can't do that. But if you had to guess, Tom, a little trivia for you.
Okay.
What is the most rushing plus receiving yards for a Rams running back this year?
So between him, Henderson, and Williams, I mean, I would want to say over 100, but their offense has been so bad. Like their offensive line was horrible in the beginning of the season. I'm going to say 87.
73 in week 1. They have max. So Akers had 62 in week 2. Okay. And that's his most of the season. Which is why I want the rushing plus receiving under, because I agree with you about the matchup where they could keep the ball on the ground, be effective against a very, very bad Packers rush defense. My initial read was, okay, I want the under on the rushing, but then I thought through the match was like, okay, don't really want to get there, which is why I wanted the safety blanket of the rushing plus receiving. Right. So if they hang that number, I want to look at it right away. And if it is close to 70, I'm probably in. But I want to see it. I haven't seen it anywhere yet. But if they give us a favorable number there, I'm taking it. And again, that's not in conflict with what you're saying, because again, right. I want to take advantage of his lack of involvement in the passing game and the fact this team stinks. But the matchup does matter. That's definitely there for sure. Now with the pass catchers here, you can kind of go at it if you want. The problem is, where do you go? Because I think Van Jefferson is the most talented guy in this team. But he had, I think, 4 targets in that game with Baker. He played well. And he had a game-winning touchdown. Yeah. But, not a lot of looks there. Ben Skoranek is at 30.5. Jefferson, 31.5. Tutu Atwell, 32.5. Evan Silva of Establish the Run has this joke where Tutu Atwell cannot score touchdowns outdoors because he will blow away because he weighs 112 pounds. I buy into that personally. Maybe it's not a joke. Maybe it's just a fact. So I wanted to go to Van, but the usage in that first game was a little bit concerning. Any read for you on the pass catchers?
Yeah, this is probably the toughest spot of the night, and it's kind of what you said. It's like all these players, Atwell, Skoranek, and Jefferson, have all shown upside at various times. We've seen Jefferson have a super high ADOT for the Rams in previous seasons, so he's a player that can realistically get to his receiving prop or longest reception on literally one play. But there's no dominant option. They're all good-ish options. So if you want to take a dart throw, I guess you would just take the one that has the longest odds for a touchdown. I don't think there's a right answer. I also don't think there's a wrong answer here, which means it's a complete stay away spot for me, where no one's seeing a dominant amount of usage. We don't know what the Rams offense is going to truly look like after one game sample with Baker Mayfield. So if you are super high on Jefferson, great. If someone else is going to be super high on Skoranek, that's also great, but it's simply a stay away spot for me because there's no clear indication of who is going to be that number one option.
I think the way I'd want to do it is I'd want to go to the alt market because, again, there you are taking advantage of volatility. It's a volatile situation where I don't know who will be getting the work here, but I think there is a path to a good game for whoever it does wind up being, quote unquote, like the guy, if there is a guy in this offense. Jefferson's alt receiving number for 40 plus yards is plus 144. I think that's intriguing. He had 2 deep targets in Baker, 4 overall targets. So again, not great work, but maybe another week involved with Baker, stuff like that. For 50 plus yards, he's at plus 240. So I think I'd rather go there rather than like the raw line, take advantage of how uncertain the situation is.
Right. Like I said, he's had a high ADOT over the past few seasons. He's kind of been that wild card.
Yeah.
At least when Stafford was there, it's like he's been that wild card option for them where you had Kupp, you had Woods, who are at least consistent, obviously. And then it was like, oh, Van Jefferson, that third wide receiver, like he's going to have these weird blow-up games where he has like 2 catches for like 70 yards or something and a touchdown against the Cardinals or whatever it is. So I'm totally on board with that theory.
Yeah. You also have the Ben Skoranek Midwest narrative, played college at 2 different Midwest universities. So back in the Midwest, facing the Packers, you got that going for you.
Okay.
If you care about that, which you definitely should not. You mentioned touchdown props, Tom, as being a way to take advantage of the pass catchers here.
Right.
So whether it's with them or elsewhere, what do you see as far as value in the touchdown market at FanDuel Sportsbook?
My favorite is Alan Lazard at plus 270, the Lazard King.
Yes.
Kind of, yeah, not Miles Mikolos, the Lizard King, the Lazard King. Kind of I'm going to say a slow couple of weeks for him in recent outings, but we've seen Christian Watson step up and have some big games, a lot of touchdowns from him. Randall Cobb got into the end zone a couple of weeks ago against who was it, Philly. But Lazard's still coming in with a 21.1% market share, 32.7% air yards market share, 12.5 ADOT. More importantly, a 24.5 red zone market share, which is all really good. And I'm of the belief that quarterbacks try to keep their star wide receivers happy, and due to the involvement that he has in the offense overall, and he hasn't scored in 3 or 4, I think it's 4 weeks now for Lazard, like he's kind of due for a touchdown. And ultimately the Rams defense isn't amazing. They're bottom half of the league for most yards and most touchdowns allowed to wide receivers. So I think it all kind of lines up with a pretty big number for the prominent offensive pass catcher. I know that's overall in the season. Watson's certainly taken a big step forward.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. 270 is a pretty long number. I also looked at Cobb at 6-1. Pretty long. I know Romeo Doubs is full in practice, but there was a quote this week from, I believe, Matt LaFleur saying that it was hard to know how much to ramp him up given how much time he had missed. That's somewhat concerning. I think that Cobb will still have a role. Now, that's not my favorite one. My favorite number, if you have a gag reflex, Tom, I would encourage you to engage it now.
Sammy Watkins.
No, absolutely not. Slightly shorter odds than Sammy Watkins at 20-1. Malcolm Brown is 15-1. The Rams elevated him to the active roster. I think a couple weeks ago they signed him to the active roster, which means he will be available for this game. I think he was on the practice squad before, but he's on the active roster now. He's 15-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook to score a touchdown. And Brown did have one of their 5 red zone chances in that game against the Raiders last Thursday night. The other game where he was active was back in week 9. He had 1 out of 5 red zone chances then, active in week 6, 1 out of 13 then. He had 0 of 2 in week 5. So week 4, 0 of 8. So like he's somewhat involved in the red zone at times. We've seen him be involved there previously. We like the matchup on the ground for them. I don't mind that. I don't mind it. It doesn't make me feel good. But like, I'd rather go there than like Baker Mayfield at 11-1. It's also funny that both defenses are more likely to score than the 2 quarterbacks, which is a symbol of this game. But I think that Malcolm Brown 15-1 is enough to get my attention where I'm like, okay, I've not bet this, but I could consider that and may wind up doing it.
Okay, I mean, you're playing this as like a role thing. The opportunities have been there for him. The matchup is certainly there, and it's obviously a pretty big number.
Yeah,
like red zone touches, red zone looks, like those are really important, and especially this time of the season, like there's no reason for him not to be out there in certain situations if he has the trust of McVay, which is a thing in its own for running backs with McVay. Like, that is, if he's going to be out there at 15-1, like I could see that as a little bit of a dart throw.
I just checked. So I live in Rhode Island, which means I have to bet on the lottery sports book. He's 8-1 here.
Ooh.
I don't want to drive to Connecticut. It's 33 minutes, and I don't have time for that today. But
8-1. So that means he has the same odds as
no, he doesn't. They're all shorter because it's a monopoly.
Well,
Monopolies are great. Love monopolies. Big fan. Can't wait to move to Illinois. This is the same thing as Rashid Shaheed thing a couple weeks ago.
Right.
He was like 4-1 here, and he was like 8-1 everywhere else. Just miserable.
Right.
I gotta move, man. I can't
Patrick
do it anymore.
Taylor is 8-1 on the FanDuel Sportsbook.
Right.
That's a pretty big difference.
Oh, that's upsetting. Okay. Any others you want to shout out here before we close up?
No, I think that this game it's one of those games that I feel like you're either going to be super right or super wrong on a lot of things. And like the wide receivers for the Rams kind of bring is where I'm getting that feeling. It's like, if you're on Skoranek and he has a big game, like you're going to hit all the props on the alt line, and the touchdown his touchdown prop is plus 480. Like if he has a touchdown, like you're just going to be right. And if you just happen to be on Jefferson and he doesn't get any of the looks because there's no dominant option, then you're just wrong. And it's kind of one of those games where it's like, you gotta live with the variance of what we're going to be seeing and kind of move on to Thursday.
But also take advantage of the variance.
Right. But then that's where the high upside is there. If you nail Skoranek and he has a huge game, like you're crushing like plus 480, plus 230 on the alt lines, like et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Like, you would be in a great spot.
Yeah. Volatility can be your friend as long as you embrace it and take account for it and stuff like that. So like you said, be okay with volatility. Volatility is okay if you can take advantage of it, be in some different markets and stuff like that. I think that's the way I'd want to play things for tonight. All right. That is all that we have here for today on this Monday Night Football preview, but still 4 shows in total for this week. We'll be skipping the Friday show as a result of that being on the day before Christmas Eve. So still 4 shows for this week, though. Get those by subscribing to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Tom, good luck to you tonight. We'll talk to you once again soon.
Thanks for having me.
You can find Tom on Twitter at DFS_Tom. Check out his write-ups of these island games over on numberFire.com as well to get his thoughts on all the props. Maybe we'll squeeze a Malcolm Brown one in there. I can edit it after the fact, just add it in there and put it on your name, not mine. No one listens to the podcast, so we're good. I'll make that work. You'll never, ever know. I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. Good luck to all of you tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to take our first look at NFL week number 16. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.